Hi, good evening, everybody. I know it's not quite 8 o'clock, but I'm going to start now. So it's been a bonkers last couple of weeks. I think we're all feeling it in the UK. I know in the US they're feeling it as well. We've had some revelations about food, and there seems to be a core of people dotted around England and the US and Canada who are really getting a handle on what is going on with our food and what we're taking that we shouldn't be taking, and where less is definitely more at the moment. So the less we fiddle, the more healthy we will be. So I just want to do a mic check with Captain Kronos.
Hi, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear you, KK. Nice to speak to you. Lisa.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Lisa. Nice to speak to you. Yeah, welcome everybody, and to some of the people who are now subscribed to my page on X. Finally got that through. I'm very excited about that. So all support we can get on that would be fantastic. It goes towards making sure that all these alerts are going out daily. We've managed to help a lot of people this week and the week before, particularly with the stuff I'm going to talk about in a minute. Annetta, could you do a mic check with me, please?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. And you?
Yeah, good. Just about. I think we just got through that last one.
Yeah, we're scraping through.
Okay, we're going to crack on. Just so people are aware what's going on, we are making huge strides in understanding how the changes in the weather, the pressure, all sorts of things are slotting in to each other and affecting our health. I'm just going to recap really quickly on what we found out about how arsenic affects the cells. So normally our cells are a round ball with an in-out gates for metals and various other things. Arsenic stops those gates from working, holds them completely open, and encourages the accumulation of metals in our cells. And so then the cells don't work properly. Not all of the cells, some of the cells will work better than others, but a lot of cells won't work properly. And as we are exposed to the weather, so feeling under the weather, getting brain fog, all of those things are related to the weather specifically. As we are exposed to pressure, for example, pressure goes onto our cells and pushes all of those metals out into the blood. That's where you might find people getting blood clots or major diabetic issues, hypos. Even people who aren't diabetic might have a problem there. Any kind of heart attack might happen there because your electrolytes suddenly have masses of metal flooding around in your blood. And various other things like headaches. Headaches seem to happen whether the metals are in or out of the cells, and in that transition phase between when your body's not quite sure where to put the water to stop you from becoming really majorly unwell. And then as the pressure releases the cell, so if you imagine kind of getting under pressure, it becomes smaller, there's less room for all those metals. And then when the pressure is released quite quickly, and we've seen that this week, as the air pressure is releasing very quickly, probably 20, 25 millibars in a day, which is really quite dramatic. As that's released, all of those fluids and metals and everything, all of the salt, potassium in your body flies back into the cells. And so there's very little fluid left in your blood. And that's, again, another risk for things like clotting. Becomes dry, you might become incredibly thirsty and feel really dehydrated in both scenarios. So it's really it's very mechanical. If you think about it, the cells aren't meant to be mechanical. They're meant to work in this beautiful ballet of electrical kind of coordination with all of the metals and the proteins and the other minerals like phosphate and stuff like that. But arsenic gets in there and everything goes to pot, and things are going in and out when we aren't expecting them to. So we might eat something one day and feel perfectly fine, and eat it the next day and not feel fine at all, because we've got too much of X, Y, or Z in our blood where we didn't have it the day before because the pressure has changed. So what we're doing at the moment is trying to establish what this up-down relationship is between the weather and how our bodies are feeling. So trying to track that really, really closely so that we can tell everyone else, expect to feel like this, expect to feel like that, and this is what you do to try and mitigate it. So, for example, at the moment, we're in kind of middle pressure and we're going up in pressure. And then at the end of the week, we're going to crash down again. Well, about Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to crash down again. We've got about a 35 millibar change over less than 48 hours to come up this week. And that is just before Christmas, as everybody is finishing school and finishing work, when they're going to be out having parties, and when everybody is super vulnerable. I haven't seen any fog on the horizon at the moment, but I can guarantee that will be there. I had noted that I took a picture of a Ventusky layer of fog from the last session. We'll come to that in a minute. And that seems to have disappeared off their apps. So I think sometimes using the apps interchangeably is a good idea. Just check all of them, make sure you know. And luckily on Windy, they have webcams, and I found what I needed. So I had the proof of the fog there in an actual picture form, which is slightly better actually than a map form. So I'm going to ask my speakers to just tell everyone how they've been getting on this week. And if anybody would like to contribute what they've been experiencing, what they've been doing, please do hold your hand up and I will add you as a speaker. KK, go for it. Oh, Lisa, do you want to go? You go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the calcium, because that's made a huge difference. I've been gluten-free for 12 years. And now I'm eating bake-at-home bread from France and Italy. And I'm tolerating it really well, no problems whatsoever. And obviously drinking Coca-Cola. It has made a big difference to me.
And so you're feeling, I mean, I know that you have skin issues, but you've actually been flying somewhere, didn't you? You flew somewhere, you flew back, and actually relatively, I think you've fared quite well by the sounds of it, haven't you?
Yeah, I was working in Lisbon. I flew out, kept to the protocol with the food and drink. And unfortunately, everybody but me that went on the trip has now got pretty much cold symptoms, coughing, really under the weather. And I'm the only one who's not ill.
That's incredible. So I think it's funny actually, because early on in all of our research in the spaces, we were thinking that having a cold was a good thing, that, it just means that you're cleaning. But sometimes I think it means that, yes, you are cleaning, but that actually you could not need to clean if you didn't have all those toxins in you in the first place. So I think by cutting back or just completely cutting out all of those added metals that we've been talking about in our food is really key. Definitely all of those fortified foods, anything that's packaged, you need to start reading those labels. Like Eddie, this fantastic guy who I said posted up today, he kind of was saying, I mean, I won't use the words that he used, but basically sliced bread is rubbish. It is. In this country, it absolutely is, because it's full of additives. It's full of metal. Calcium is a metal. We keep repeating that because we need to drill that home. And really interestingly, this week, we have had people reporting that their stores are really stocking up on French bake-at-home bread and spelt flour and all of these other things that we have identified as being safe. Yeah, Lisa, go for it.
Yeah, I think what really needs to be highlighted is I am stunned at what calcium is added to, and it's always the second ingredient next to wheat. Everything from cookies, biscuits, everything you can imagine has got calcium as the second ingredient, which is, as I understand it, it goes in order of quantity within the item.
Yeah, I mean, essentially it's chalk. I think if it's in brackets, it means that wheat is the highest, but then that in relation to wheat, those other things are smaller. But I think certainly, Lisa, and everyone on the call, I think that we could perhaps, even if they don't remove all of this stuff from the food, certainly I think we need to lobby them to remove it all. Even if they don't, there needs to be a declaration of how much is in there, because we have absolutely no idea when we pick up a packet of food, even though government have said, oh, it's X many milligrams per 100 grams of flour, the average person on the street isn't going to know that. They're not going to know that. They're going to think, oh, it's just a pinch, oh, that's fine. Oh, calcium's good for us. So we had to, I mean, I swear, I'm sure that people are getting grams of the stuff. And I put a post up the other day and said, would you eat half a stick of chalk? And I think I might change that to, would you eat a whole stick of chalk a day? No, we wouldn't. And that is traditionally what a stick of chalk used on a blackboard would have been made of, is that amount, double our supposed required intake of calcium. But as we said previously, we haven't got a clue what our need is of calcium, because we're so overloaded. How long it's going to take us to use up the store that we've got, I don't know. Anyway, I'm going to carry on to KK. Thanks, Lisa.
Well, this week, after the fog was forecast, and I noticed your warning, I went out in my garden and I had a look next to the light, and I could actually see the fog and the mist coming down. It looked like rain, and I thought, I've got to go out in that tomorrow. So I wasn't poorly then, but I went out in it the next day. I had to do lots of running around, so I was totally exposed. I used a snood, but I got sick. It started with a headache. It started with a headache around the back of my head, and then it went all the way around, like a pressure headache.
Yeah. I was that on Tuesday? I think it was Tuesday, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think it was Tuesday when it all started.
Exactly the same here. It was really strange, and I wasn't even outside, KK. So goodness knows how you felt.
Yeah, well, I couldn't avoid it. I had to go out, so I thought, right, here we go. So I had the headache, and then you start feeling really heavy and you start feeling tired. And what I noticed was, as I was walking, I could feel my calves and my shins getting a little bit crampy, a little bit painful when I was walking. And when you start getting that thick, treacly feeling. So I came home and just started feeling really tired. And for the last 3 days, I've had to have a snooze in the afternoon. I always know when I've been exposed, because I get so tired that I have to have a little snooze in the afternoon, and it helps to break it. But I also found yesterday I had gut symptoms as well. So I'm just thinking that's probably everything just coming out, isn't it? Now, I'm just about okay today with like a little bit of a headache, but I've stuck to the diet. I've stuck to our protocols, and it really does help you recover much more quickly. But that fog was a killer. It's awful. Everybody in my house is sick because of that fog. And I think, London really got walloped. And then, of course, you provided us with information, about what's going on underground, which you might want to talk a little bit more about and how that affects us. But a lot of people in London are really quite poorly at the moment.
Annette, would you like to share?
Yeah, sure. I couldn't hear KK. I hope everyone else did. Yeah, I felt quite all right, actually. But of course, our countermeasures are working, and I've taken some more rest. As we're doing the countermeasures, we're also doing the daily detox. Well, I am anyway, when we are detoxing. So I figured giving my body the ability to get to work as well, to, get out what I want out, and to put everything I want in the right place, because, with the fortifying, our bodies work in balance. Like you said, cells there, it's like a ballet. When we fortify, and particularly with metals, it's going to immediately create an imbalance. So it doesn't even make sense what they're doing from a point of nutrition. Yes, you need more calcium or you need more this, whatever they make up. There's no idea of how the body is going to receive that, So, our countermeasures, Coke, obviously, carrying on with detox, cutting the metals, and finding it much easier now to eat. In the beginning, it was like, oh my goodness, can't eat anything, and it's almost as if that's gone. Now there is plenty to eat without buying packaged food or staying clear of the fortified ones. So I hope everyone takes heed and detoxes and stays away from the metals. And we know that even during the onslaught that's been going on now, it is possible to feel quite all right, at least all right in comparison to what we would be if we weren't.
Thanks, Annette. You're absolutely 100% right. And what we also are, I've got you, Nicole, don't worry, I'm coming to you in a second. What we've also found is that with this pressure change, so in, out, so high pressure, low pressure, high pressure, low pressure, if we are reducing the amount of metals that we are taking in that are added, artificially to food, we then get to push out that metal and we don't put it back, which means that our cells are becoming cleaner. We're getting more energy, like natural energy. Our mitochondria are starting to work better. So Jill, go for it.
Hello, hi everyone. I've been okay this week actually. I've twice been hit by the lurgy, so I'm actually really, really cautious about going out unless I really need to in the horrid conditions, and cut right down on milk, just taking calcium-free bread and no magnesium, and I'm feeling pretty good. So I'm really feeling quite pleased with myself, actually. So, long may it continue.
That's fantastic, Jill, because I understand up in Scotland things are pretty hairy at the moment. And particularly in the north, I understand from one of our contacts, Perplexed Onlooker, that some people are very, very poorly up there. So,
yes. I'm actually, I'm based in Hampshire, but I go up a lot to see my elderly mum. So actually going up, when am I going up? Tuesday. So I'll be up there for a while. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when I'm up there.
So funny, I assumed you were in Scotland.
No, well, it's the Scottish accent, you see. Yes.
All right. Thanks very much, Jill. Tracy
Okay.
Ann.
Right. So I'm a person that's been under the doctor and I'm on medications for depression, anxiety, sleep problems, you name it. I found that I've managed to cut back a lot, but there is still certain foods that I still do eat, but in moderation. But I'm more worried about the medication side of it, how that's affecting me with the calcium and stuff in it. This week I've been really poorly. I've had chronic headaches, but we have had the fog and the misty weather here in Bridgewater. So I just generally feeling unwell, but I've also had an upset stomach where when I go to the toilet, my stools are very loose and it's been quite unpleasant. The headaches, as I think it was Captain Cosmos said just now, with the headache round the back, going to the front. All of those symptoms. And I find as well, sometimes when I'm out, I get really hot. So I wondered if anybody else was suffering with any of those symptoms.
Yeah, so you sound like you have the classic array of too much metal symptoms. Absolutely classic, Tracy Ann. So don't think that you're abnormal in any way. All of us have had, it generally tends to be kind of breathing issues first, then you have stomach upset, then, the heat is where the body just can't quite get rid of everything that it needs to get rid of. In terms of medication, I think you'll have to speak to your doctor. If there is calcium in your medication, just speak to them and see what they have to say about it, because I mean, you know, we're only able to share what we do. We can't give you medical advice on that at all. But if you feel that you want him or her to address what they're giving you and kind of explain better to you why they're giving it to you, then that might be the best port of call.
Yeah, I think I understand why they're giving it to me, because I have had a breakdown. And because I was losing too many deaths. There was too many deaths, and one day I just come home and I clicked, and I couldn't get myself right, and I've been like it nearly 2 years now. So I think I know.
Really
Yeah,
terrible. I'm so sorry.
I was just losing a person a year, and it just got to me. Anyway, so I know why the doctors put me on it. I know there is calcium in 2 of them, but I need to check the rest. But I will, when I see the doctor next week, I will have a word with her and see what her take is on it. But I don't think they all know about the calcium overload, do they?
No. Annetta can speak to you for a second.
Hello, Tracy. Just wondering, are you adding any phosphate to your diet with or drink?
Yeah, I just drank a can of Coke now.
Yeah, brilliant. Good. I was just wondering about that because, you know, do everything that you can do, and obviously the medication you speak to your doctor, and just be over vigilant regarding food stuff, and maybe for a while cut back, really cut back, and you might start to feel quite soonish a difference actually.
Yeah, I will. I do need to cut back a little bit. I know, because throughout my life I've always been a cereal addict.
Right.
And I know that's got to go, but because I'm addicted to it, I'm finding it really hard. But yes, it's going to have to go.
I'll tell you something that can be quite addictive as well. You know the French bread, the baguettes and the petit pains that are in the supermarket. Have you tried those?
What, the French bread that's half baked? You mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm that's what we have.
Yeah, because if you find a nice bread, if you like jam, if you like cereal, might have a little bit of a sweet tooth. Find a jam that has fruit pectin in it. And could that be
own jam anyway?
Yeah,
I've got loads
or
of that.
maybe even start with much smaller portion of cereal if you feel you have to have it, and then one of those rolls, for example, just to sort of wean you off. But I think you would notice a difference, and then maybe that would spur you on to, you know, more and more. But good luck, anyway, Tracy.
Thank you.
Wish you well.
Tracy, thanks, Annette. I just wanted to add to that. You mentioned, Tracy Ann, really interestingly, if you want to mute your mic for me, that you had an addiction to cereal, and it's probably not the cereal you're addicted to, it's probably the effect of the calcium, because calcium is a neurotransmitter, and it helps basically get our body to do things, you know. So if we want to stand up and go somewhere or exercise, calcium is the thing that actually allows our body to coordinate itself to be able to do that. And the problem with calcium is if we've got an overload, it behaves like a drug. And in fact, I'm sure I talked about this last time, cocaine opens the calcium channels. So it allows calcium to go in and out in a way that it shouldn't. And this is partly, we think, why people have such a problem getting off the fortified food. I mean, it is literally a drug, And the same with things like cheese. People are addicted to cheese because it is very high in calcium. And as we begin to build up a calcium store to a level that we shouldn't really have, it stops our cells from working the way they should. So our mitochondria get more sluggish. So we immediately go for a calcium-based food because that gives us a little spark of energy. But the problem with that is that the more we add is actually we get the spark of energy, but then we become more sluggish than we were before, because calcium starts to build up and it starts to calcify everything. It calcifies your muscles, your joints, around your skin, even rashes. That's calcification. Your brain fog is calcification in your brain. It's deposits of calcium and other metals. Let's not forget, there are other metals flying around. We will talk about that later. Just any kind of lumps and bumps that you have in your body, most of those will be calcified. Most of those, you know how a diseased liver looks very kind of almost dry and hard. So that hardness comes from calcification. So everything is literally turning to stone when we have too much of this. So a temporary burst of your lovely cereal that makes you feel great for the morning is actually setting you up later on down the line to get worse and worse and worse. It's very, very gradual because it's only a small amount each time, and it's unnoticeable. And that's partly the problem, is that you find you actually end up needing the cereal. So all of those cereal manufacturers who add the fortification are going to be really, happy because you really want to buy their cereal every time you go to the store. That keeps them in money, but it also keeps you sick. So that keeps pharmaceutical companies in money and GPs in jobs. So do you see, it's a big racket around the fact that you are overloading with calcium unwittingly, and you're kind of doing them all a massive favor, but the only person who's not having a favor done is you. And that's the same for all of us. It's the same for all of us. If we want to stop this racket that feeds off of our illness and our addiction to calcium metal, then we have to just go, no, we're not doing it anymore. Sorry, guys. You're going to have to actually give us real food for once. Nicole, can you actually speak? Go for it.
I was just actually going to pick up on something that KK said a little bit earlier about, was it maybe gastrointestinal issues, and actually maybe sharing a little bit too much information, but I'm going to do it anyway because I feel like it's really important. But due to some sort of quite busy work commitments, I was a little bit slack on my watching what my calcium intake was, and I definitely wasn't drinking probably as much Coke or Diet Coke or whatever I can get my hands on Coke for a little period of time. And I actually realized that my bowel movements had become quite irregular, not in the constipation type of way rather than the diarrhea type of way, compared to what they used to be. And actually calcium carbonate is a known cause of constipation. And I remember we were chatting, and you said, we'll just go and have a can of Coke. And I didn't even think about it. I was like, oh, yeah, okay, let me just try that. And honestly, within about half an hour, everything felt much clearer after that. So I wonder how many people do actually have this type of issue and then take some other medication to help them with this, not realizing that it is actually the calcium carbonate that contributes mostly to this. And I'd only misbehaved a little bit with the calcium carbonate, but because I'd been so clean for the previous sort of 3 weeks before that, it really did make a difference. I actually couldn't believe it.
What did you eat that had it in it?
It was just breads. So, when you're on the road and you're kind of just trying to grab some food, it was, it was calcium fortified products that I was, eating, and still my coffees. I probably drank a few more coffees with milk in than I should have. So, yeah, it all contributed to this sluggish bowel.
That's amazing, isn't it? Really, it's very, very quick. I noticed that. The other thing is, you don't necessarily need to have a can of Coke to go to the loo in the morning, guys. You can
No, I'm not advocating that.
No, I know. What I found is that just literally one of those small baked pain French rolls is enough. with a bit of jam or marmalade. I found it's yummy, and I put some ham in now. So I got this marmalade and ham. Everybody's looking at me going, what are you eating? But it actually is really good. But basically, the phosphate in that flour really, the phosphate in the French bread will bind anything in your gut and just really help peristalsis. Phosphate is fantastic for breaking things down, and that's what you want. You want anything that's got stuck overnight to be broken down. And
actually, I did read into it a little bit more, and they do actually use phosphoric acid as in medications to relieve constipation anyway.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's amazing. That's amazing. So it goes to show, doesn't it, really? The proof is in the pudding, so to speak. That sounds terrible, but, so I'm going to pass to... I'm just trying to think about what's been happening with the weather this week, because we had this fog. So I just wanted to ask if anybody had been out you did, Nicole, didn't you? You went out in the fog. You took your dog out.
Yes, I did. I did take him out, and it wasn't a pleasant experience. But actually, that was also, I think, on the same day that we had that carbon monoxide wave.
Sorry, I was just grabbing something very quickly. So I'm going to go on then to explain a bit about what happened this week with this wave, this energy wave. We've been noticing this happening. Since getting rid of the calcium, it's like we're seeing things that we never saw before, because I think our brains were so foggy. This is exactly what happens when you're going through these weird waves. You have brain fog, you get forgetful, you can't link thoughts together. So things that happened 3 years ago, you might not necessarily remember now. And we were talking previously about how you can tell somebody something and they be nodding their head and having this whole conversation with you about how they agree with you. But then the next week you'll see them and they have completely forgotten what you said to them and have gone like as if you actually hadn't spoken to them. It's quite concerning. So this week we had what looked like a carbon monoxide plume develop underneath Europe. And these have been kind of coming and going under Europe, Asia, Africa, America, Canada have had some big ones. And it's like, when you watch it, it's like a wave, but it's underground. So you could see this week in the clip that I posted, a very short clip, because I sped it right up because it was the easiest way of showing people how this wave went. So it kind of came in from the west of France into the central part of Northern Europe, at Amsterdam and Belgium, France, Paris, etc. And then it looked like it was trying to get into the UK, and it managed to get from Dunkirk, which we'll talk about in a second, through to London, and then all the way to Wales. And it was in sequence. So when you speed it up, you can actually see it spreading in that order. And the carbon monoxide was clearly coming from underground. It wasn't coming from above. We could see no evidence of anything creating this from above at all. It had to have been coming from underground and was kind of growing from a pinpoint into a big plume and then being blown away by weather modification. And so what I realized then was that this is actually evidence that there are significant underground fault lines or passageways or whatever. I mean, huge tunnels that could be underground, but very deep, because I think when you look at nuclear explosions, for example, you would only get kind of that level of residue if it were about 5 kilometers away and still be relatively safe. We could all feel it. I don't know about you, anybody who's migraine sensitive. I think it was yesterday or the day before, there was a wave. There's a quick, sharp burst of heat. It feels like a hot flash, like you're in the menopause, and you can't stop it. It's literally wham, you're hot. It's like happens so suddenly. It's not even getting hot. It's like whoosh, you're hot, absolutely boiling. And then you strip off and you kind of eventually you get cool again. But what we noticed was that is happening at the same time as these plumes are appearing above ground. So there is definitely some sort of radiating energy coming from underground when this CO, this carbon monoxide, breaches cover. The other thing is that we had Mark, one of the guys on here, who posted up some testing that he'd done on a horse, and that was returning titanium today. He's been treating the horse for 6 months. And Zara, one of the other people in our groups, she said that she had returned high titanium, posted the image up today, in her hair last year. So we know titanium is in the mix. It isn't used all the time, but definitely that was returned this week. And if you notice, there might have been a slight difference in effects this week to the last wave, which I think almost certainly was calcium. But I felt like there was a bit of a difference in the way it reacted in the body. So the migraine was slightly different. This one was like really it needed water to calm it down, whereas the calcium one wasn't. So it needed phosphate to break it up. But it was like this one didn't respond to the phosphate. So I don't think it was calcium. I think it was titanium. So that's just all observations at the moment, but that is what I'm thinking. Did anybody else get any kind of headaches that they felt that were different? Tracy Ann, you put your hand up earlier. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was having the headaches bad. I'm a person that don't normally suffer from headaches, but all of a sudden lately I'm getting them all the time.
Yeah, it does seem to be quite widespread.
Well, I'd just like to agree with Tracy. I hardly ever get headaches. I certainly don't take painkillers for them, but this headache has lasted a full 4 days. I mean, it's eased off, but I actually had to take some Nurofen, which is unheard of for me. But it was so obvious that just going out in the fog and then all of the symptoms happening, because I was clean and I felt great. But after the fog, I felt poisoned.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal. It was very, the interesting thing about this one is it was incredibly thick and it was quick. I think there may well have been arsine in the fog as well. So combined with the metal, which then would just literally work its way into all the cells. So yeah, I definitely agree with you there, Lisa.
Yeah, Friday evening, I don't get headaches at all. And Friday evening, I had a humdinger and I literally couldn't open my right eye. I had to keep my right eye closed. It was the only way I could focus on anything.
Yeah, that was when we were talking, weren't we? I had that weird migraine that I was telling you about. It wasn't like the normal migraines that I have, the calcium migraines. This was totally different.
Yeah.
And it did feel like it wasn't going to go anywhere until I washed it away. So lots of water if it's titanium. So what we're going to try and do is pick up these signals. The problem I have at the minute is that I have a lot of people online telling me I'm an idiot, that I'm making it up, and people don't message you, blah 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 blah. But the thing is, we know they're signaling and we know what they're talking about because it's very clear. They put poison 21, 22, 23. We know that they're talking about poison. So it's not ridiculous to then take that step and go, well, actually, maybe they're talking about poison. The tricky bit is trying to work out which poison they're talking about. And usually I'll get some sort of repeat coding on a post that I write about something incoming. And that might be a tutu. I had loads of tutus last week, and I kind of didn't say anything. I did confirm it, but I didn't say anything because I was just like, oh, people are going to think I'm mad. So it is a bit, I'm going to try and not succumb to the whole, people are going to think I'm mad thought and just get on with it. But maybe just get the team to confirm that what I'm seeing, I'm not imagining. For example, I saw very interesting sequence of numbers. We saw 5 on either side of 7 and 17. And then the 5 on the left went and the numbers moved over. So it's a bit like, so I'm thinking 5 means the enemy. And if you know what 5, we've been talking about it in our groups. We think it's a country that doesn't exist anymore, not on paper anyway. And we think that they are potentially leading the charge. But this, it's all, theory. It may be completely wrong, but I don't think I am. And there's been a lot of chatter about this particular country online over the last, couple of years, particularly this year, actually. I've noticed also there's a German girl, Stiped, who talks about this country and kind of quickly left a chat. I think she might have been told to leave a chat when they got into really talking about Germany and the country that I am talking about that no longer exists. So anyway, what I was thinking was that actually they were trying to show us that where they were in the position of battle, that on both sides they were surrounded by, on the Atlantic side and on the Russia side, and that eventually the left side, so the Atlantic side, we won through on that, I think, in that battle. And that's what was happening underground this week, I think. But please don't hold me to it. It could be complete baloney, but I will try and find those codes. And we will literally keep repeating this exercise, watching for codes, trying to verify using all of these apps and maps and referring to what everybody's feeling at the same time, so that we can the repetition is the most important thing here, because we don't have eyes and ears underground. We don't have eyes and ears in the planning department of the military. So what we have to do is take what they give us, the bare bones of what they give us of these signals, and try and make sense of it so that we can help everyone around us. So I'm going to go to Jill first, then Annette.
Hi, I'd just like to make a comment. You're talking about 22. So 22 is the chemical number for titanium.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, I just thought because it's interesting you talk about titanium and then 22 coming up. So it would be good to, check the call signs and see what, if they do relate to the chemical numbers and what they're spraying, because that would be a good lead, wouldn't it?
Sometimes it's just a sequence, so it's really difficult for us to come to a conclusion on that. But saying that, very often when there is a sequence of atoms in a line, they can often look like each other and behave like each other, and also decay one into the other. So it could well be that just titanium was like the central element, and that there were other decay elements around. Because with radiation also, when we have lightning in the sky, we are also getting particles being irradiated. So that will change. And so, for example, you might have cesium, and that will become, is it scandium? Annette, you're the one who knows this. I think it's scandium. And then,
it is.
Yeah, and then titanium, I think, is the one. But anyway, they go down and they have a chain. Each chemical has its chain of daughters, they're called, radioactive daughters. So, and if you look at, I think, what was the one I was looking at yesterday? Xenon, I was looking at. which is another interesting one. Xenon is the isotope, it's a gas, and is the isotope that they measure to tell if a country is using nuclear weapons underground. I mean, why would you need that?
Bloody hell.
I know. And I showed the guys last night a map I found, 2013 to 2014, and the whole of the northern hemisphere is red, for God's sake. It's completely red. And they kind of said in the paper, oh, well, you know, there's a lot of xenon in the atmosphere, and from industry. I mean, industry cops it every single time, doesn't it? And I'm just like, hang on a minute. You're probably, you know, you're trying to use an ever dwindling heavy industry over the northern hemisphere of the West to blame for all this insane level of xenon, which certainly isn't coming from us. This is not coming from us. It's got to be coming from some, you know, an aggressor. And actually, interestingly, Jill, the xenon is coming also from underneath Russia. So it really makes you wonder who the hell is attacking us.
Yes, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, very.
I think, lots of research to be done, I think, on that.
Oh, God, it's just endless. And I am trying to write on radiation at the moment, but it's just an enormous field, trying to, you know, distill it down into something brief that everybody can kind of get their hands around. Is very tricky, and I do go into a bit more depth in some things, and those things are going to go up on the subscriber page. They're already up on the Boom Review and on SS. I can't say the platform because I'll be chucked off, and also on the Coffee Club and on Apple Podcasts. So the podcasts are on the Apple Podcast. All of the articles and everything are on the Boom Review. The links are at the top of my page if you want to access those, or everything will be gradually moved over to X as well behind the subscription wall. But I won't include everything because there's a lot of research that was done right at the beginning that is a little bit out of date now. So it will need to be updated. So I will kind of work on doing that. In a way, it's like we're rejigging when we're putting articles together now. We're just rejigging everything to include all of this information that we didn't have beforehand. And it just makes so much more sense now than it ever did. So does anybody want to make any comments before I move on to the next bit? Hi, Annette.
Hi, I just wanted to say about the naysayers, and I know that you get a lot of that. So first of all, thank goodness that you are brave enough to carry on and, you know, shake it off, because that's how and why we're here today. And we are living proof that it works. And you yourself, you know, you've gone out and you tried this and you tried that, and you've taken many for the team. So that's what we've got to remind ourselves, and especially you, for everything that all the hours, thousands of hours they've put into this, that there'll always be those naysayers, and they can say they can debunk this and debunk that. They cannot debunk that we're feeling better and faring better. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we just have to keep going now. Nobody's allowed to collapse. We've got to make it to the end, guys, because otherwise they'll go, well, look, you know, it didn't work, did it?
Well, it's already working.
Yes,
it's already working. It is.
And really interesting
for us and our animals.
The interesting thing is that there are still so many people on X who are trying to sell us this and sell us that and this supplement, that supplement. And we're all going, no, stop adding, stop adding stuff. The thing is, when you add so much stuff to your diet, you haven't got a clue what's going on. Not a clue. The only way you can do this is by cutting everything out, every additive, everything, and going with basic good food and then seeing how you feel. And obviously not picking those foods that are very, very high in calcium and who've been breathing in umpteen amounts of contaminated fog, which is unfortunately the cows at the moment. So, KK.
I was just going to say that I can prove that it's working through my recent blood tests.
Yes, you can. It was really amazing, actually. KK, do you want to elaborate on that or not?
Yes, I don't mind. I don't know whether you all know, but I am HIV positive, and I have been for, oh my goodness, decades. And one of my blood results, the T cell results, have hovered around, I think it's 470, 490 for about 10 years. And so I've been doing the protocol now for a couple of years, and I hadn't had any blood tests done. And I recently got a full blood count as well as my T cell count. And my T cells, I think it went up from 470 to 710, which is unheard of. So we do have some proof that this is all working. So I'm just excited to see where it's all going to end up. But just everybody keep going. I mean, it's working for me, it's working for other people. And we just want everybody to be as healthy as they can.
That's it. No quackery and potions. I think that's the thing, isn't it, KK? It's just such an amazing story that you have to tell there. And I really hope that the community of people that you're in touch with will benefit from that, because it's really important. And I think there's a whole issue here about ethics in medicine, because I don't think of all the people, I'm constantly seeing doctors posting this and that and the other about, trials and how success with treatment using this drug and that drug and the other drug. And there seems to be not one doctor who has ever asked, is there a metal overload? Is there any toxicity from metals or other things that shouldn't be there? Is there, and if we can't find it in the blood, where else can we find it? I mean, how many pints of blood do we have? And that's about 8. We have 8 pints of blood, and then God knows how many kilos of flesh and bone and everything else. So they are basing their whole diagnosis on 8 pints of blood. What about the rest of us? It's like the blood is the only thing that ever does anything. Come on. It doesn't make any sense the way they diagnose illness anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. And, all we want is for just somebody to go, tell me more. That's all we need, is tell me more. And we will tell them. We don't want to ridicule anybody. We don't want to beat anybody up about it. What we want is for them to ask questions and listen to the answers and act on them. That's all. We don't have all the answers, but we know probably a downside more than they do about toxicity, metals, arsenic, and things like that. And the weather, of course. And this is the other thing, is like multidisciplinary. How on earth are they going to know the effects of the weather if they don't know that the arsenic is making our cells susceptible? And this has been going on for hundreds of years, by the way, guys. It's not a transient thing. KK.
I'd just like to say what I'm looking at the moment is calcification of the bone marrow, which is really interesting.
Yeah, tell us about that. That's the niche. Do you think you could simplify it down a little bit?
I'm looking at how blood cells are produced, and they're produced in the bone marrow, and they're produced in these places called bone marrow niches. These are special places. They're very complicated places, but they have your stem cells, your blood stem cells, and all of the blood comes from those stem cells. So I'm just looking at how arsenic and calcium affects those things, because when we're talking about calcification, we're not just looking at HIV, we're looking at Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. I mean, it seems that calcification of sensitive parts of the body is behind a lot of disease. And I'm really excited to learn more about the bone marrow niches. I'm going to do some more tweets and see what I can find out, because there's not a lot of research on it either.
It does seem like you say, KK, it seems that the soft organs seem to be very, very vulnerable to calcification. So the brain, the thyroid, the pancreas, the spleen, and I think the thymus might be a soft organ as well. I'm not entirely sure.
Yes, it is. The thymus is where T cells go to mature.
So that makes sense, doesn't it? So I think the issue is that the softer the organ is, the more vulnerable it is to calcification, because it's really easy to get into it and to embed in a cell. This is why we see so many of these soft organs swelling and not working. And then a lot of even alternative therapists are saying that the issue with many of the issues are down to the thyroid, or they're down to this or down to that. That it's not down to the organ at all. The organ doesn't stop working just because it feels like it. It stops working because it is vulnerable to attack from arsenic and metals. That's all it is. It's not that you were deficient. Your thyroid is deficient and your pancreas is deficient. It's not deficient. It's just got too much crap in it because we keep being fed it in all our food. And I'm going to come back on to cows in a minute. KK, go for
it. Well, just quickly, if you look at the incubation times for some of these diseases, that's probably enough time for that particular tissue to become calcified.
How long is that, KK?
Well, the incubation period for something like so-called HIV, 10, 20, 30 years they're talking about. And I was diagnosed pretty healthily, and I've watched my results just go down and down and down. And no virus does that. But calcification wouldn't it? Calcification would take years and decades to build up.
This is it. And it's only by seeing this rapid increase that we're seeing at the moment that I think we've realized that something is up. And I do wonder whether this major increase in calcium and iron, well, particularly calcium in our bread, almost wasn't done deliberately so that we would notice it. That actually people now eating this bread actually feel physically ill when they eat bread. I've heard people saying that they don't feel well when they eat the bread. So perhaps that's going to wake people up to that a little bit more as well. But yeah, it's bizarre. This whole kind of the virus paradigm, the illness paradigm is becoming more and more untenable by the day, because there is so much that we can actually explain using all of this, huge theory that we now have on the effects of metals, both essential metals, calcium particularly, and toxic metals on the body. It can all be explained in that way, all of it, all disease, and I mean all disease, and you know exactly which one I'm not saying deliberately, but all disease can be explained that way. There was another thing I saw today about how to regrow a tooth. The Japanese have invented something using the USAG1 switch or something to regrow a tooth. Now, that sits in what is known as the sonic hedgehog pathway, and that is the pathway which governs embryonic growth. And embryonic growth is where in our cells, when we grow older, we get zinc fingers. And these are just like little protein fingers, and they get tied by a zinc molecule to stop that molecule from allowing embryonic growth to continue. And this is how we our growth slows. We don't grow any taller. Just everything stays in proportion. And as adults, we just stay the same size. But if you then start sticking bits of goodness knows what into the body to try and regrow a tooth, you have potentially got migration of something that could trigger the hedgehog pathway elsewhere in the body. So reopening that zinc finger that's tied off to reactivate the sonic hedgehog pathway that could cause embryonic growth and cancers in people who have too much calcium in their cells and the DNA is all a bit messed up. So those, beware of, you know, these kind of crazy treatments. I just think I look at these treatments, these ever more wonderful treatments, thinking, what are you doing? Stop messing around with the most extraordinary invention ever in the universe. The human and animal bodies that we have around us, all the organisms, are the most perfect, most incredible things when they are allowed to work in the way that they should. Ellaby, I need to hear from you. What's it like down where you are at the moment?
Hello. Just to say, just like last time, you're doing an incredible job, and this is a great conversation. And KK, you're doing a great thing in talking about all of this. It's really important. I have autoimmune disease, and it really is your own journey, because I chose not to get the doctors involved. I did it my own way. But anyway, by the by, so I live in Cranbrook. I'm about 20-25 minutes from the coast, in Kent, East Sussex borders, and it's been awful. I mean, it just doesn't stop, and we just go in a cycle of feeling okay, then it all comes down, and then we're not feeling okay, and it makes me laugh listening to you all, just because we are all, I think, intuitively, naturally grabbing the things that we think will work or seem to work for a period, and stops us crashing or feeling worse. I too grab a bit of sourdough bread, actually, and have a bit of lime or jam on it, because it does the job for a little bit. But the weather here is terrible. Every day I am shocked that people don't notice even the filter is wrong. The air is thin. Even inside, actually, now the air is thin. We're all noticing it, which brings on breathlessness, tight chest, feeling fatigue, all of those things. But it is relentless here, and we have had to really cut down on how much we go out.
That sounds like the carbon monoxide, Ellaby, because you were right in between those two plumes, one in Dunkirk and stretching over into Kent and London. So you were right in between that, and you also are very close to where our friend, our Canadian friend in the channel, goes backwards and forwards endlessly. But they haven't been, interestingly, those planes, all of the planes that we know are doing stuff in the sky, never go up when it's dangerous. And if they do go up, they go up in a diamond, and the diamonds, we are pretty certain, can be flown remotely. So we know when it's dangerous, when they are not up in the sky, which is not helpful for you, because it's either gas or radiation, one or the other.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, we never feel that we get a break. We can feel it. It's closing in on us. Plus the fact I know that we've got underground tunnels going directly under us here, through into the coast. And, you know, it makes me wonder, you know, you guys are all talking about the calcium and calcified. As soon as you said that, we've always been told in films, we turn to stone, we turn to stone. And when I first got diagnosed, I was told that you really have to watch your calcium levels. Now, this was from a specialist who was not, who was very different to most doctors. I had quite a few ignorant doctors, and kept on saying, no, that's not it. This is it. And he even said that you really have to watch your calcium levels, but you can't do it alone on your own, because quite rightly so, as you said earlier, Caroline, we can overload our systems with so many supplements, it just doesn't work. And my journey started when I started from the scratch, eliminating everything that I knew wasn't serving me well, and starting again and noticing what works and what doesn't, what crashes me, what doesn't. The thing is, on top of that, we're also all individuals with different things going on in our systems. But this is the whole thing. We are all overloading with the crap that they've always given us, because they've always known that that's what's going to affect us, so that we're constantly dumbed down and not feeling well.
Constantly
I've
dumbed
always had
down
to
and
do
always looking for that quick fix, which is the
Absolutely.
calcium again, isn't it?
Yep.
So it's like we keep going back to them, even though it's terribly bad for us.
Yeah. But I think it's quite cool that we're all actually getting somewhere with all of this. And it's about balance, isn't it? Everything always is. But I've certainly been taking some mullein leaf recently, because I've really felt my lungs aren't working to the capacity they should. And I'm even thinking about getting some oxygen bottles to help that, because I know that helps most people to have more oxygen. And as I have oxidative stress, I have to take all of that on board to make sure that I'm getting enough oxygen into my system, because that can bring on huge fatigue. And none of us are getting pure fresh air. It's crazy.
No, down there you're not at all, are you? It's been really bad the last. I mean, we'll see if anybody is from the London area apart from KK. I know Nicole is, but really we know that Kent area, quite a few people we know down there have been struggling badly.
Well, it's just horrible, because you can't. I just want to breathe properly.
I know, and it's like you can tell it's taking its strain on your thought processes. Not quite as fast as you normally speak, and so all of that. So, oh God, I was going to ask you something and I can't remember what it was. But
I know that feeling.
Do you want to add anything, lovely?
It's just this all-round thing of I'm actually interested on how this calcium and how everything that's vaporizing from underground, how it affects all these people that already have disease, already have that metallic overload, if for want of a better word. I mean, I don't think I know anyone that hasn't got an overload of metal. I mean, most people don't even know it. I think we've all been overloaded, and people wonder why they're getting sick. And we're getting calcified.
Thinking about your lungs, do you have a pulse oximeter, Ellaby?
No, I don't.
It might be a good idea to get one and to see what your pulse oxygen or your oxygen levels are. I normally do it on both sides, and what I have found since really cutting every bit of calcium and magnesium out, I literally, my supplements are down to alpha lipoic acid and taurine. That's it, and there's a tiny bit of magnesium stearate in those, but very, very tiny. I had left the magnesium in originally in the Viridian ALA, but I found actually dropping that made a huge difference. Huge difference to my breathing. So even just 100, 200 milligrams of magnesium was making a difference to my ability to breathe.
Really?
Yeah, very small amount. So literally I'm taking as little as I possibly can, humanly possible. I'm not eating any food that I see metal in, even if it's sodium and potassium. I'm not having it. And anything, somebody spoke about pulse testing a little while ago, that you can pulse test food. You might need a bit of help doing it. But what I do is I get the food in the palm of my hand. I hold it against my right cheek because I'm left-handed, and then I take my pulse with my spare hand to see, to see whether it changes, and you can usually feel it fairly swiftly. But if you wanted somebody to help you with that, you just get somebody to take your pulse to see if when you pick up that food and put it on your face, if there is a change. So it's a speed up or a slow down. So it can get very, very rapid, or it can slow quite dramatically. So usually, if you're feeling 100% calm and fine and your pulse is fine, then you do that test. You'll see very, very quickly which foods you can and can't have.
I will add, though.
Yeah.
So in the last week, I've been taking. I always take hot lemon in hot water. Lemon in hot water every morning, every night. Always have done. But now I'm actually taking a shot of lemon and cayenne pepper in the mornings. That has really helped me. Now, I looked into it just because a friend recommended it to me, and I've been using that with moringa. And the last few days, I have felt so much better, just in general, more balanced, not so slumped, so kind of all encompassing fatigue. It's proved to really help me. But, like everything, it's all about testing what's right for the person, but also things like potato. I tried to try some jacket potato the other day, and I noticed straight away I felt so dehydrated, and I wanted to know from you. So what's that? What is in the potato that makes me feel
the skin, Ellaby?
Yes, all of it, the whole lot.
That's it. That's it. You've answered your own question. Basically, all foods that are grown in the ground, and all humans and all animals, we all have a mechanism which pushes toxins to our extremities. So it would be to the skin, to the hair, for all of us, or fur for dogs, pets, and to their skin as well. Or for a vegetable, it would be either to their skin, or it would be to their seeds. So for example, peas are very high in calcium, probably because they stick calcium on the fields. Potatoes, in a test run by some British scientists, they did an analysis of vegetable arsenic content for vegetables grown in, or various produce grown in Cornwall, which is known to have a high arsenic soil level, and grown somewhere else. I think it was Birmingham, somewhere around there. And they compared the two, and there was a definite much higher soil uptake of arsenic for Cornwall. It was much higher, and they found that the peel held the most amount of arsenic, so with potatoes, for example. And
shocking.
They also found that none of the arsenic in the vegetables was organic. None of it. It was all inorganic. It was all arsenate and arsenite.
Well, this it's fascinating to me because I eat it, and it's so difficult to describe, but it is like somebody's just flicked a switch, and it completely crushes me. It makes me feel so shit and exhausted and so dehydrated. It's ridiculous. The thirst in me after having something like that is just ridiculous. So then if I get a headache from outside, if I eat the wrong thing, I always give myself Celtic salt. In fact, my whole family have it. As soon as the moment we have a symptom of what's going on outside, we have Celtic salt, and it always relieves it.
That's because it draws water into the bowel and makes you go for poop. Okay. So what I would say, though, be really careful with taking any salts of any kind. Do try and keep them to a minimum. The reason I'm saying that is because it is behaving exactly the same way as, you know, if there's arsenic around in your body, which there is for all of us now, the sodium can just go in and out. There's no osmotic stop to that. So if you take a lot of salt and then we go into a deep pressure drop, which we're going into shortly, if you take a lot of salt, that is going to draw more water into those cells, along with any calcium and any other metals, and that's going to make it more likely that those cells are going to pop and empty all their contents out into your bloodstream, or that they are going to start doing this whole neuron firing thing and giving you a migraine or weird twitches and stuff like that. So just be careful with that.
Yeah.
Particularly,
it really is. It's intricate, you know.
Yeah.
Every day, I'm sure everyone feels the same. We're all trying as best we can to try and suss out how to manage it all, how to manage it all.
I mean, I think for certain the food is really difficult. I do not eat generally British produce in the winter, but the good thing is that everybody will be upset that we buy in from abroad, but we know that many African countries and Spain, for example, grow undercover, and a lot of their produce is much, much safer this time of year. When people go into Christmas and they feel poorly, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've ever had a normal Christmas before, you know, stopping eating gluten and everything that had calcium in it, where I didn't feel unwell, particularly as a child. We lived in Italy for a while, so I was okay there, but not in England. I was always feeling under the weather in England during the Christmas Day period. Always felt horrifically ill, overfull, you know, very dyspepsia, uncomfortable, not full because I was full because I'd eaten myself silly, but because your gut stops working in the way that it should. So when you're eating your food for Christmas dinner and you are hoping to not have that feeling this year, perhaps just make sure you're peeling all your vegetables really well for a start, because the excess calcium will also go to the skin. So all of these, the vegetables aren't stupid. They do exactly the same thing that our bodies do. And make sure, you know, that if you're doing sauces, gravy powder has, even stock cubes have got this stuff in. You have to check every single tiny packet. It's so annoying. And the other really interesting thing is that if you are getting very used to the feeling of how calcium is in your body when you've had it accidentally, you'll know that you've had it, because you'll feel like you're excessively hungry and your body you can't satiate that hunger. And it's got nothing to do with actually the food. It's got to do with the fact that all of this calcium is like pinging around your stomach and it makes you feel hollow. It's actually just making your tummy raw. And it's emptying everything. When we think about really what is actually happening, you know, arsenic does act on the proteins or doesn't act on the proteins, but then the calcium and all the other metals do a whole other big number on our cells as well. So I think the two in combination are very effective. Ellaby, go for it.
Well, I just think you're quite right. I mean, our bodies are under attack. I mean, they must be going nuts inside, wondering what the hell to do next. We're all trying different things and trying to, you know, strike that balance, make ourselves feel better. But, well, I mean, our bodies are wonderful, amazing things, and we all know that we can reverse most disease, but it's because we don't have the professional care we should have that we are all trying to find our way in this war.
To be honest, Ellaby, I don't think any of us want it much these days, purely because I think they don't know what's wrong. They can't heal anybody. And if they can't heal anybody, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know?
And, you know, to finish what I would like to say, change the subject quickly, you know, and then comes the I Know It All brigade on Twitter. I mean, you saw it this morning. You know, even people like Dom Jolly hopping on board, trying to make Catherine look stupid when all she's asking is anybody noticing? Is anybody watching and seeing that none of us are feeling that great? And, you know, this has to be talked about more. The fact that you work so hard doing all you do with your team, and yet there seem to be so many jumping on board without any factual evidence whatsoever and telling you you're stupid or you're crazy. They don't go off and do tests. And it drives me nuts that there doesn't seem to be anything that we can do, because they are all brainwashed and programmed to think a certain way, and it is only going to transpire or them to have a hallelujah moment when they are ready, because of this drip feed and slow trying to wake people up from their sleep, when actually we really, really, really do need people on board now, because it is really bad. And I want it to end tomorrow where I live, because it's just so bad. It's really affecting everyone. And without having people on board, without having the majority understanding and getting it, how is that going to help any of us? And how are we going to move forward if there is just a minority all the time knowing the truth and, you know, being slagged off and put down, rather than more people coming on board to your way of thinking? It astonishes me how you keep going, because just today showed that so many people are still full of ego and dumbed down. It's very sad.
They're calcified, Ellaby.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
They're like stone.
I know.
And their
do
hearts.
think there is something to be said for that. I think that
I agree
people's
with
thinking has become very rigid.
Absolutely.
Because they can't form new neural connections because they're all calcified. So KK, thanks, Ellaby. Lovely to talk to you, by the way.
Thank you.
I think just following on from what Ellaby said, I think it's difficult to reach people, but I think also people are still quite traumatized from COVID and other events over the last 4 years, totally by design. But I think we have to keep that in the back of our minds as well. And some people don't want to, but some people are incapable.
Yeah, it's true. You're right.
I just want to go on a little bit onto Dunkirk, because we had that shooting on Saturday where 5 people were shot dead by an immigrant. Sorry, I was just having a bite to eat. I haven't had my tea yet. Anyway, so we had a lot of signaling. We know that this was an attack. We're getting all sorts of weird numbers on my account, followers. And we were looking at the postcodes, and these were spread out all the way around Europe. So Sweden, Ukraine, France, some real key spots, actually. The Sweden ones were very industrial. One was a quarry town where calcium carbonate is made, and various other chemicals. But I was kind of collecting them, but again, doubting myself as to whether these were relevant or not, but we've kept them to have a look at. And there were some near the border of Belarus and Ukraine. There were 2 actually near the border of Belarus and Ukraine, which I think is important. Definitely something was going on over there. But the Dunkirk one's very, very interesting, because that was the plume that was heading into the UK. And we had Nigel Farage and Kemi, I can't pronounce her surname, of the Conservatives, doing this kind of to and fro about steak and a cheese sandwich. Now, Sandwich is a town on the east coast of Kent. And then he put a post up later talking about a deal with Iraq and Germany to stop all this flow of people coming into the UK. Now, that's interesting for a start because it's Iraq and Germany, which is the country affiliated with the one that I was inferring to just previously. But Deal is also a town on the east coast of Kent. So I think Kemi and Nigel are working together. I think that account that we've all been seeing that suddenly ballooned up to 111,000 in 2 months, I don't think that is associated with Nigel Farage. I think it's appropriated him. So he might have retweeted once or twice at the beginning, but I haven't seen much recently. I don't think they're connected because he also, this account that I'm talking about has stolen some posts from another person who's been online for a very, very long time, and he's a bit annoyed about it, understandably, because this account has suddenly gone from 0 to 111,000 in no time at all. But anyway, so Dunkirk on Wednesday had deep, thick fog, like the fog we had on Tuesday here in the UK. I think it was Tuesday, or it might have been Wednesday, actually. But very, very deep, thick fog. Then, almost simultaneously, there was a plume of, there was zero visibility. I had to do it like this because they took away all the fog markers. There was zero visibility at a very concentrated point off coast, the west coast to Dunkirk. And then straight after that, a plume of carbon monoxide, a very, very big and concentrated plume of carbon monoxide started to develop right offshore from where this shooting happened 2 days later. So I'm thinking what happened there is that we got a very clear sequence of fog, then the radiation, and then the reaction. It's called excitotoxicity. It is where the body sends lots of rapid signals in the brain, rapid signals, and kind of makes you do crazy things. And then he hands himself in. So it's a bit like he kind of woke up or was in a, in some sort of kind of crazed state, a drugged state almost. Almost certainly he was primed. Where he got the gun from, I don't know. You just don't go shooting people randomly. There will be a backstory behind all of that. So feelings go out to the people who lost their lives. Awful, absolutely awful event. But we can see exactly how it was amplified. The conditions were amplified by this fog, by the carbon monoxide. And then today I went on to look, and there are 3 very large heat spots right about 3 miles to the northeast of that little plage, which is where the shooting took place. So absolute 100%, something went off underneath that spot, created a radioactive wave that then activated any metals that came in from that fog in those people. And I wouldn't be surprised, actually, and I might see if I can see what the reports are on people's state of health in the camp at the moment, to see if they are suffering unduly after that fog exposure. But I can imagine it's pretty nasty over there at the moment. So, KK, did you put your hand up?
I think I might have, but I think I forgot.
Not quite got rid of that calcium yet, KK.
No way. It's still there. It's really, it lets you think so far, and you get halfway through your thinking process, and then nothing. It just stops dead right in the middle, as if everything just stopped functioning. But I'm pleased it doesn't do that with my breathing.
Oh God, yeah, God, the whole breathing thing, that was a problem for me the last few days, actually. You do get this kind of, when your lungs get full of a metal, and this is why I don't think it was calcium, because this is an effect that I didn't have the last wave that we had. I get this kind of feeling like my lungs just don't want to do anything. They don't want to breathe. So yeah, that was yesterday and the day before. Not very nice.
Yeah, that happens to me at night sometimes when I'm in bed and I've calmed my breathing down, and you open your mouth to take a breath and then nothing for like a few seconds, and then you have to kind of catch up. Does anybody have that?
Oh, scary, isn't it? Yeah, hands up. Does anybody have that? Anybody get that? That kind of breathing arrest, that shock awakening in the middle of the night?
Oh, it's just me.
Yeah, no, it's just you, me, and Tracy Ann. Tracy Ann?
Yeah, I get that. With the breathing in the night. Very short of breath.
Yeah, and it's a bit bad really, because you get this feeling like I get really weird dreams, like I can't breathe in my dream, and then I wake up and I'm actually not breathing. And I've had this actually, interestingly, had this way back when I was at school in Norfolk. And this was when we were being told about the nuclear bombs. Do you remember that we used to have those drills in the school hall, and they would tell us about nuclear bombs going off, and that this is what we could possibly do to help ourselves. I'm not sure what they were thinking when they gave those talks, because there was probably nothing. I mean, they terrified the pants off of everybody. I would dream about these nuclear bombs going off, but then I'd wake up and I wouldn't be able to breathe. So I think they were at it already underground all the way back then. I'm not going to tell you when. I'm not that old, but, you know, old enough. So, yeah, it's not pleasant at all, that. And I don't really have a solution for that, apart from glugging a whole can of Coke of whatever description. And I find that my usual ALA, taurine, and some Nurofen does help kind of clear things. But if your lungs are flooding, Nurofen doesn't really help. I find there are certain times that it's okay and certain times that it's not. But certainly when you're getting migraines and stuff like that, Nurofen's very good at calming things down a bit. And lots of water. So that was really interesting. But also, Tracy Ann, do you want to quickly say, and then I'll go on to America?
Yeah, just another thing. I did have the lurgy, what I called the lurgy, with the bad head and the flu symptoms last week. Quite severe, where I was in bed for a couple of days where I couldn't even pick my head up. Anyway, I seemed to get over that, but I think it's left me with a weak chest. Now, every year I have problems, round about the Christmas, for the last 3 years now, and I get this chest, this cough, it's constant, and it goes on for months and months and months. I just wanted to know if anybody else is suffering from that, or whether it's just me.
I think a lot of us have experienced endless chest issues. I think with the lack of calcium, for me, certainly my chest is doing a lot better. I'm getting what I would call good phagocytosis. So that is, I think it's called phagocytosis. It's when your phagocytes just go and clean your cells. So you'll get snot, like proper coloured snot, rather than kind of weird metal coloured snot. Nicole, did you want to say something? I'm sure I saw your hand up.
I think Common has requested to speak.
Right, okay.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Oh, hi there, Caroline. Lovely to hear from you. I have taken note of you before. I just want to put some input and kind of a question at the same time, if that's all right. I'm from Hampshire, and I've had weird situations, and obviously you answered it for me. Well, I didn't even know who you were at the time on X, but to do with the fog. Do you think, it's a couple of questions, but something that I noticed was in the morning when the first fog came around, I think a few weeks ago or a month ago, I was walking in the fog, no problems, but during that day, I was having extreme pain in the bottom of my ribs, and it was compulsing. It was insane pain, and obviously I thought I was having some sort of serious issue. So obviously went to the doctors, went for a piss test, etc. No problem. So come back. I think about last week or 2 weeks ago, there was another fog, and I happened to be going out in the morning again, and the same thing happened. And I'm sure what you're saying about the calcium or something like that. Would you say that's related? Because it was my automatic thought was that the fact there was something in the fog give me excruciating pain. I honestly couldn't do anything. It was so painful.
Can you describe exactly where it was, like in relation to your ribs?
Yes, so it was on the left-hand side. There was a little tingle on the right, but nothing. It was on the left-hand side, and the best way I could explain it was pretty much on the at the end of one of my floating bones, I guess, and the muscle that was around it was going into spasms. It was.
That sounds like spleen to me. I don't know, Annette, would you say that was spleen?
Yeah, sounds like.
Yeah. So that would say to me that, you know, whatever you were breathing in was making a very quick transit to your spleen. So just really, I think when you go out, everybody, if you have to go out in fog, and try not to, because it's very hard to regulate.
Quickly, I will say thank you about the putting out about the Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I actually had that, and it did relieve me. And I don't drink these things. I normally stay away from aspartame because I react from it badly.
Yeah.
So
just normal Coke then. Normal Coke is fine.
Yes.
Yeah,
and with the acid in it, and I have to say thank you, because you know, I wasn't sure it was work, but when you're in that situation, you do anything, and I took it, and it did relieve the pain. So I'll just say thank you, and you're doing.
Oh, bless you. No problem at all. But when you go out, just make sure that you've got a face covering. We are looking at PM 2.5 masks. I can't recommend anything at the moment personally, but I would get something that's washable, that has a removable filter that you can just chuck away. But do please take care in the fog, guys. It's not nice. No. Even with the recycle in my car, it still got in. So either just shut all the vents, make sure that your windows are wiped down so that you can drive without fogging up. But it's not nice at the moment at all. So the fog is one to absolutely avoid if you can. Ella B, can I ask you to respond to that? Thanks, Carmen. I'm going to mute you. Thanks.
Well, yes, just to say, you know that if your spleen's under it, it's normally to do with a stressed body. And from my own experience, I know that diarrhea is a sure sign that your spleen's up the spout and needs attention. But something I wanted to talk about just quickly, KK brought it up as well, this trauma. You know, we've all got trauma somewhere along the lines, and everything that we've been through, we're all processing our trauma and healing it as we can individually, but we are all on high alert, which means that our bodies must be on high cortisol, which is something I've looked at recently to kind of balance the cortisol, because I've noticed that I'm heightened because of what's going on, but not only that, you know, past trauma, you know, there's a very emotional response on top of this too that's really important in the mix, I think. And you know, the body and mind are without a doubt connected, and you know, our hearts are our second brain and all the rest of it. But it's the emotional stress we're all going through, because we've all been awake for X amount of time, but we too have had to release the trauma somehow and heal it in the best ways and in the tools we all have which is again individual. I just think that's just another layer, but you know, it's relevant, right?
Absolutely, it is relevant, and I found actually, Ellaby, that things, you know, from my past, I think as we discover more about illness, more about how everybody is getting ill now, then we start to apply it to what happened to us previously, or to our loved ones previously, and that is, it's quite it's like grieving, deep grieving, in a way that I think is profound, more profound.
Yeah,
than
and
ever
lungs
has
are
been.
grief. On an emotional level, our lungs, our organ of grief is the lungs, which is interesting, and fear. So you know, it's all there, cajoling and calcifying.
Yeah. Okay, Ellaby, I'm going to pass to Nicole. Thanks for that. It's really useful.
No, thank you. It's been a fascinating talk.
Thank you, lovely. Annette, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I just thought it was, just want to touch on the latest, you know, with the trauma, but what we can actually do now, rightly so. When I first found you, Caroline, I was shell-shocked. And it took a while to get over, like, they doing what to us? And gradually we get used to it. But even with this calcium thing, it brought a lot of feelings of guilt in me, because I had been pushing things on people and thinking, oh my goodness. So, and with the Coke, I mean, we always drank Coke in our family. But I had certainly raised a finger to some of them and said, well, you know, you shouldn't overdo it. And now I'm saying, come on, you know, have some more. Like my 82-year-old mum, for example, you know, she can't believe it now. And I'm saying, yeah, have a Coke. But it's important that we, as we're doing our countermeasures for our physical body and the detox, also do it for our mental body, you know, or our mental part of our body, of ourselves. I know I mentioned before the vagus nerve, the nervous system. There's so many resources now how to settle ourselves and how to land into ourselves, and not just will we feel better mentally, but also actually physically, because it is when we go into that rest and digest phase that we also repair. So I think it's great that we touched on that too, because that's the other aspect of, you know, looking after ourselves, the whole of ourselves.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Annette. Nicole, I invited you again to see if you can get on again. Ellaby, do you want to add to that?
Well, yeah, just quickly. I absolutely swear by Rye Frequency. I know I've mentioned it before, but it is amazing at giving you healing, and it's free and it's on YouTube, and they are just frequency tones, which is what we all go back to, energy. And it really helps me, it helps my family. You can put in a symptom of what you have, and that frequency will not only clear that blockage, but it will also clear the physical as well as the emotional healing that needs to be done. It's incredible stuff. So I you know, ask you all, if you're having problems and you want something that's actually there, ready and waiting, just grab yourself a glass of water while you put it on. Always put it on headphones as well, because you can feel the vibration in you and you can feel the effects. It's amazing. If nothing else, it'll bring you peace in the first sesh that you do, and you can just do it for 15 minutes a day. That's what I do. My family does it whenever they've got back problems or flu-y symptoms, or just feeling emotional and they feel like they need to heal. That's our go-to in this family, and it really does work. But anyway, I'll shut up now. Talk too much.
So I think for people who don't necessarily do that, things like singing, we're big singers in our family, and that
yes
always gives you a vibration. It's really good for clearing the lungs. I've been known to sing ridiculously all the way to go and pick up my kids and back again. Well, actually, just on the way to go and get my kids, because I think they might shout at me if I did it.
I have it so loud, it's ridiculous.
But you know, really humming, singing anything that you really love, like Bohemian Rhapsody, anything like that, that really exercises the lungs and gives you that vibration that you need to kind of just keep everything moving.
Absolutely.
You know, if you're not particularly into exercise, you know, a bit of yoga, a bit of ballet stretching is perfect. You can even just do it sitting down if you really don't want to stand up. And Nicole, you know, she is our resident dancer, but she can't get on to tell us about it, which is really annoying. Nicole, we miss you. Annette.
You said it already. It was the humming, because singing and humming stimulates the vagus nerve as well. So it does several things, and it brightens our mood and everything. So yeah, it's great. But for those who doesn't want to sing or feel they can't sing, humming is also great.
Lisa, do you sing?
My family keep reminding me there's windows around our house.
That's not very nice. Oh, funny, Lisa.
Yeah, I was the only one at school who had to mime in the choir.
Really? Oh, that's bad.
Yeah,
I can tell you though, practice makes perfect, because one of my children was completely tone deaf and now sings beautifully. So you can practice in the car on your own.
Well, they used to put me behind the piano so that the pianist could kick me if I actually started to sing.
Oh, that's funny. Anyway, right. Okay. On that funny note, I'm going to just quickly move on to America, because I think we all want to talk a little bit about what's going on with these big vehicles in the sky. So we had these over Lakenheath. They're over 3 US bases, not over the UK bases, which is really interesting. And also all down the east coast of the US, it seems, New Jersey area, New York. Now, those are areas that have had very heavy carbon monoxide. And I had a look at the map earlier, and there are 3 fault lines that run from kind of northeast to the south of the US on that side. One runs through North Carolina. I can't remember what they're called. I'll post it up later. And then there's another fault line where the Blue Ridge Mountains. So there's Blue Ridge Mountains fault line, and then there's another fault line next to that, and then there's the New Madrid fault line. There was nothing on the New Madrid, nothing underneath that, but the other 2 were really, really, really buzzing with carbon monoxide. So, and actually the one that runs from New York down to North Carolina and further down south, that I think is what all of the hurricane was about. So there was some sort of war starting there. There was a confrontation there. There must have been. And I think these vehicles, I think they do belong to the US. I don't think they'd be allowed to fly if they didn't. She says, because there are things that fly in our airspace that we know shouldn't be flying in our airspace, but they do. And I think the problem is that you can't shoot them down because they're carrying some very, very toxic stuff. And if that drops in over, you know, a built up area with lots of people, that would just kill them pretty quickly. So don't go shooting things out of the sky, please, in the US or anywhere else. Because you could cause much, much more damage than these vehicles are doing. Anyway, my instinct is that they are actually on the US side, not enemy, and that they are being used because they can't use manned planes because of the carbon monoxide and the fallout coming from underground. And as we know, the effects of those waves of radiation, you know when they're there because you feel suddenly really hot. You suddenly get a headache. It's like your brain suddenly kind of gets a hole in it. It really does feel like that. And if that happens to somebody flying a plane, they're going to crash. And in fact, one of the bad guy planes did crash the other day. So in the US. So that's my instinct. I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts on that. Have you had a thought about that, KK?
I hadn't really paid that much attention to it because I thought it was a bit of a con. Now that you come to mention it,
it does make sense to me that they would be, number one, they need to be testing. Number two, they need to make sure that there is nobody breaching overground from those areas. I'm not sure if the one that was supposedly firing was actually firing anything. And also, it looked like one was spraying, but I'm not sure it was. I think it was probably just lined up with a trail, whatever that trail was. So my instinct is that they are auxiliary to the forces and that they're there just kind of maintaining a presence when military aircraft can't be in the air. That's my thoughts on it. Lisa, any thought?
Can I say something quickly? Is that all right?
Go for it. Yes, go.
Yeah, I had a discussion with my friend about this because we're quite knowledgeable about certain little things, we were doing a long discussion. We were talking about the fact mainly out at night, and it does seem to be that they're scanning. And they're over US military bases, as you were saying. Now, obviously, we were saying, well, clearly there's like a political opponents going on here as well. So it could possibly be, they're scanning, trying to find radioactive materials or something. It's just something that we thought of. But obviously,
yeah, they might well be, actually. They might be heat-seeking people or, as you say, orphan sources of radioactive material, yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that obviously there's a changeover of Trump and Biden, and it's quite ironic that obviously it's over the US bases. So I'm guessing, well, we were guessing that it's got to be something along those lines. They're trying to keep an eye on each other type thing. But that's just, out of the blue. We were just coming to the closest that we can come with. But yeah, it definitely does seem like they're trying to find something because everything looks like they're scanning. I mean, why would you go out at night in America when you can do most things during the day, So.
Mm. Well, we know that most of the war is being conducted at night. And that's going on. But that's really for safety. That's to make sure that people aren't out driving around and there is a blast and they all crash. A radioactive blast, which would make people, potentially crash, heart attacks and stuff like that, strokes and whatever. So doing it at nighttime, I think number one, it allows everybody to be really relaxed in their homes, which is safer. So inside a building, you're always safer from radiation blasts. I was watching a video on Nagasaki actually earlier today at some of the awful injuries that the people got there, because I think, you do need to look at everything when you're looking at the history of radiation as a weaponry. And even the clothing that they wore, depending on, like a seam of a top would actually protect them from radioactive reaction on their skin. And where there wasn't a seam, they would get a reaction. It's very peculiar, very, very peculiar. So even being inside a building is much, much safer than being out in a car driving around. So I think that's why a lot of it's conducted at night. We do feel that the political stuff is just to keep everybody occupied. And, you know, I know everybody fights about it, but actually what's really interesting is that even though they're fighting, there's quite a lot of collaboration between the politicians on all sides. And you can see by watching the way they're kind of playing this tag game. No, you know, you said this. No, you said that. No, you said this. You said that. And then it's just literally keeping everybody like, why is he saying that? And why is he? And he's an idiot, or she's an idiot, or whatever. And so whilst we're watching that, there is actually coding going on in those conversations. If you look really carefully, there's coding. So the names that I dropped earlier, Sandwich and Deal, those are two different posts from Nigel, but they were related directly to something that was actually happening right then and there with carbon monoxide and this blasting going on in the Kent area of the UK. So watch really carefully, because we don't think that the political game, as it were, that we're all watching and kind of getting annoyed about is actually necessarily real, and that it's being used as cover to communicate with each other about what is going on in the field at the time. So who's winning which bits of the war and what the next move is and stuff. I don't think they really talk about planning as much as the Kemi Baddock and I can't remember, Kemi, whatever her name is, and Nigel's interchange was quite playful. Whereas then you get the IW account who was being aggressive. And so you could tell that that wasn't connected to this interchange between these two. So you have to really read between the lines to know what is somebody trying to insert themselves in an account, trying to insert themselves into a scene. So that IW account, I think, is trying to insert itself into the reform camp and establish itself as a trusted partner, except we don't know who the hell they are. And people are making a lot of guesses, but it may not be that person, that young kid. I don't think it is. I really don't think it is, because they put out 2 warnings for blasts in the Liverpool area and the St. Helens area the other day before the blasts happened. And that isn't what Nigel did on the Kent one. He did it in between the two. It's really very interesting. If you look at the detail, you have to really drill down to the detail to work out what's relevant there and what isn't. So I think we're going to wrap up soon. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming on and listening to us all ramble on. Common, I hope that answered your question. Was that okay?
Absolutely fantastic, thank you.
Well, it wasn't really a question, it was your observation, but thank you for those thoughts. If you could pass that info back to them, our thoughts on that would be useful, because what we try to do is look at things analytically rather than emotionally. And as we detox from all of this kind of crazy chemical stuff, we are able to do that much more effectively and stay much calmer and less emotional. So has anybody else got anything to say before we go? No, that's it. Thank you, everybody. It's been a couple of hours. I hope you've had a good listen. It will be available, recorded on here, and we'll make sure that it's kind of edited down to a slightly more manageable session on the other places that we put it on. Okay, so thanks for listening, everybody, and have a good evening.
Good night, all.